Good morning and welcome to ASI's Tuesday Morning Show, where ASI's most outspoken editors talk promo products. I'm Melinda Lagos, editor-in-chief of ASI's magazines. We have a very, very special show for you this morning. We've had a lot of great guests on the show, and this morning's guest is so excited. How about this? That someone from our IT department broke down the door to get in here to ask some questions. Jason Kuttner is here as a special guest this morning. He's head of ASI's tech support team, and he's ASI's Employee of the Year.
Yay,
and
yay.
I understand that he even has a T-shirt that says, "I'm a Mac Daddy." So we had to let him on the show today because we have with us today special guest Steve Wozniak. Of course, he is a Silicon Valley icon and philanthropist for more than 30 years, and he, along with Steve Jobs, founded Apple in 1976. And guess what, guys? He is going to be our keynote speaker in Orlando this year on Tuesday, January 6th. So we will get to see him there. But we are lucky enough to have him on the show this morning. So let's welcome Steve Wozniak. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm very lucky to be on your show.
Well, we are lucky to have you. And like you may have heard in the intro, one of our IT employees just had to be on the show with us. So this is the first time we've let them in the radio studio. So thank you for that. All right, well, we are going to get right into it. As I said, you're going to be keynoting in our January ASI show, and we're very excited to have you. But let's start with the questions. So the first question is from me, and that is, you and Steve Jobs co-founded Apple with the Apple I personal computer that you single-handedly designed. What are some lessons in innovation and creativity that you can share with our listeners this morning? And of course, many of our listeners are entrepreneurs and business owners themselves.
Sure. Innovation and creativity are words that have wide meaning, and, it's a great difference between. But one of the things is computers cannot be innovative. That's one of the clues today. Eventually they may be really accepted as creativity, but they can't really think out what is a different way of looking at the world, the way something like an Einstein would have. Now, in our case, it was more like, is there a formula that makes this incredibly powerful tool that only the huge, large, powerful industries have to make it available to people? And the key items were building a useful device at the right price. And there were a lot of people building worthless devices at the right price. But, and the keys to it were, well, you have a start in life. You go through life and you can be a creator, be innovative, et cetera, or you can just be good at what you do. You've learned things well in school. You know how to apply those talents. And as an engineer, you cross over to being an inventor. If you think of an idea and you build it yourself and it's your entirely own idea, I had an entire life like that. I had actually built the computer, shown it off to other people, given it away to other people before Steve Jobs even knew it existed. And it really came from just, A, my desire in life that someday I would own a computer of my own to make myself more powerful, and B, that I wanted to help a social revolution that was being spoken of where people would communicate and educate better than ever before. So you have to have a drive behind innovation. You have to have some kind of end goal, but when it's difficult to find the path that gets there, or the path that gets there at a really good sellable price that makes it worthwhile to other people, that was really part of my own, creativity and whatever. But there's, I'd never put down luck either. If you're good at something, you're going to do it in a certain year. It's really nice if that's the right year to do it.
Sure. I understand from watching some interviews with you that you were kind of born like this, right? When you were a kid, you were experimenting with transistor radios and all kinds of things.
I refuse to say born like it because I think I stumbled into, you stumble into things that you like doing, game at school, a certain friend, something you see somebody else do, you read in a book. So I stumbled into this path very early and really wanted it, and very lucky, and I don't know, so many aspects of my life that made a lot of good sense.
So one of the things that Apple has done really well is to create loyal customers, basically keeping customers loyal for life. So do you have any tips for our audience on how to create extreme brand loyalty like that?
You know what? It's really funny, but sure, we captured a lot of people with our ideas of the new computer, a computer that was so far ahead of anything in the world, so unexpected. You had color, you had games. Games were now software instead of hardware like in the arcades. Anybody could use it easily right out of the box. That's not even true today if you're going to be a programmer. we had a really good deal, and that got a lot of people attracted to us. Then we had some bad times, and in those bad times, a lot of people left our platform, and the ones that remained were the most loyal. So we still had millions of people that were, they were holdouts, and they weren't going to switch just because the other brand was less expensive. And that helped start to build this whole idea of Apple is better for certain reasons. We had a computer that worked like the human mind. Instead of having to memorize things, you just sort of look at something with your eye and point where you want to point. These were the mouse days. So we gathered a lot of people that were kind of, sometimes they're referred to as right-brain people. I don't like to use that exact phrase, but people that are kind of into, let's make things more human, make the human being more important than the technology and the way we do things as humans, more important than modifying ourselves to fit technology. We want technology to be modified to fit our own styles of doing things. And that makes computers intuitive, and anybody who falls into that says, I will never go back to where I had to work in my mind and work in my body to get things done. Now it's laid out and it's easy to understand, it's easy to do. You never go back through that door, and that builds extreme loyalty.
Hi, Steve. How are you? This is Jason from our IT group. I'm going to take you back for a second here. And I remember programming logo, the turtle graphics on the old 2GS. Does that ring a bell for you from years ago? Sure.
Oh, of course. Of course it does.
Sure. So one of the questions I have for you is I wanted to see if you could tell us some of the exciting, behind-the-scenes scenarios that happened, during the founding of Apple.
Let's see. We disagreed kind of on one thing. Well, it turns out Apple had a couple of starting times. There was a weak computer that wasn't really designed as a computer called the Apple I. Mm-hmm. It was a modification of something I had built before, a terminal to get onto something called the ARPANET, which was the earliest forerunner of today's internet. And almost nobody around could ever tell you that they actually saw the ARPANET. But I had to get onto it. I had to have it. And we had sold that. Now, for 5 years leading up to picking up the name Apple Computer and saying it's a company, Steve Jobs and I had been selling my little invention for 5 years. It was only formalizing a relationship we'd had. This first computer was a quick modification, and it worked as a computer, but even before we ever shipped one of those Apple I's, we had the Apple II, which was the machine that was going to change the world. They speak about garage, having a company in a garage, and that's kind of a myth. We didn't do any designing in a garage, any prototyping, any manufacturing. We didn't do the business. Steve did that in his bedroom on the telephone. So the garage was just sort of where we had to hang out, and once a week, maybe for half a day, check a bunch of computers, make sure they work, drive them down to the store, and get paid money. Very, very humble beginnings like that.
Thank you for sharing that, Steve. The next question.
I like to say we had no lawyers. We had no lawyers, and that's why we could get 30 days credit on the part. We had no money. We had no bank accounts. We had no rich relatives. We'd get 30 days credit on the parts, build them up in 10 days, drive them down to a store, and get paid cash, and that's how we did it.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. The next question we have is we'd like to hear about your predictions for some of the future technologies. So the Apple Watch, do you think it'll be a success? Do you see wearable technology changing our lives in the future? And the really question is how will technology in general change our personal and professional lives in the next 5 years?
Okay. Everything, the trend in personal computers has been getting more and more personal, meaning more working in human ways that we don't have to think about steps to get the technology done. My favorite thing right now is just speaking into the phones to Google Now or to Siri on the iPhone. Siri's my favorite. Asking questions, talking like a human being, getting answers back like a human being, and I don't have to follow a bunch of procedures that I memorized. This was a big step that even the mouse-based Macintosh took us away from. And so that's probably in the future is voice recognition and understanding us, and almost anything that you think of in your head, you don't have to then think, what is the process on my machine to get it done? You can just speak it, and I think that's one of those one-way doors you don't go through.
All right, Steve, it's Joe Haley here. First question is, can I call you the Woz? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Which futuristic movie or TV show from your youth turned out to be spot on its predictions for the high-tech items we're now using today? And what of the latest movies that are out there or shows, what are predicting the coolest items of tomorrow?
Well, let's see. I was a very big science fiction fan, but it's really hard to relate. I would say, Star Trek with things like communicators and the devices you pointed at somebody and it tells you what their illnesses are, and scans their body. Those sort of things. Stun guns are kind of like some powerful laser apparatus. So I think a lot of the stuff in Star Trek, the first television show, became more reality. Now, space travel is kind of ridiculous and out of it. The trouble is with science fiction is you can think of a lot of things that are impossible today, and some of them wind up being possible in the future, but some don't.
Okay.
So, Steve, a lot of our listeners are trying to figure out ways to be creative in their business and to innovate, but they run into challenges and things that they might have to overcome. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles to innovation that industries or companies need to overcome so that they can achieve that?
Biggest obstacles to innovation. Well, first of all, innovation doesn't necessarily mean technology devices that you use to enhance your business. One of the things we run into all the time is, do we let everybody bring their own platform, their own type of smartphone, and everybody works together their own tablets, or do we force everybody to go one way, which is a lot easier to manage? But I think in terms of non-technical evolution of business, it's sometimes very halted by exact specific tax laws, the ways businesses are regulated, and procedures you have to follow. That if you come up with a great idea to make it simple for your employees, hey man, grab a meal anytime you want, is one of those. Then all of a sudden you start running a awry of tax laws. The person has to report it as extra income and tabulate it and pay taxes. Oh my gosh, you can't ever simplify life. You can simplify products a lot easier than you can simplify life.
Do you think that there's a way for business owners to overcome those sort of things, or is that just sort of regulation that needs to be dealt with more in the political world?
I think more in the political world. Now, sometimes I've been an employer, and I've done it. You can make a decision that, okay, in the end, this is not, it's not the best, most optimal way financially, but you know what? It achieves the better results of how the employees feel about the company. So you can go in different directions. It's just that there's a financial penalty when you do, and that's hard.
All right, it's Joe again, and this is important to me because I have two boys in college studying engineering. So you said that one of your passions is being an educator, and you've offered your WOZI Awards for innovation among high school students. What are your thoughts on the importance of encouraging hands-on learning and creativity in educational settings and on-the-job training?
Well, it turns out that mostly in educational settings anywhere in the world to this day, that's where we discourage creativity and innovation. We have all the things are, you are right when you are just like everyone else. You're right if you don't step outside the boundaries too much. It's almost outside of school that you get ideas that you're excited about that really cause you to develop as one of those innovative type people that, the world needs and businesses need and all that. And it has to do with the way schools are established. We can put a great device like a computer that frees you up, connects you to the world and the internet, put that into a school and not have people coming out smarter because you're putting it into a system that hasn't really changed. You learn the same pages in the book on Monday and on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and you take a test on Friday on these pages. It really limits people from going in the directions that are most interesting to them and going at the speed they want to, whether it's fast on some subjects, slow on others. And I don't know how we're going to get around that. I think eventually there was actually a movie out that I just saw it on an airplane, and it pointed out that, well, you've got machines now where people can go online and take these advanced courses, massive courses online. Horrible failures so far. And the reason is because it doesn't have that human touch. Students want some kind of human guide. When you're a student, you kind of feel I'm a little bit dependent on somebody else to lead me, give me some lead-ins. We don't have that in the computer. It is not a human being. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't attract you like, hey, it knows my heart and soul. It's my best friend. We are getting closer. People are attached to their devices, kind of fall in love with them, and it's their key to the world. We're getting closer to that, but the computers don't have that personality yet. If they ever get conscious, some kind of level of consciousness, then we might get over that hump. And then you'll have one teacher per student, and you'll really beat the system.
So how important are co-ops and internships to the educational process, no matter what a student's studying?
I believe very much in co-ops and internships, more at the upper high school level. You know, you've lost a lot of kids to giving up on school being important by third grade, 8 years old. Ask any teacher of that age group, and they will tell you. They can tell which kids sort of have decided that I'm not going to be into studying. It doesn't come back in fourth grade, doesn't come back in fifth grade. So we lose them early. But in late high school or college, I don't know, just having I forget what you asked. Sorry.
Co-ops and internships, the importance to the education.
Oh yeah, the internship. Oh my God, internship is so great. There's a university in Flint, Michigan, Michael Moore's town. It's called Kettering University. And every single student is on a co-op program where they go to school for 6 months. They go into industry jobs that are provided by local industry for 6 months. Back to school 6 months, industry 6 months. They learn the relationship of the academics and the actual business needs so well. I am totally in favor of that. Plus, it gives the students the money to pay their way through college. Look how hard that is for most students now.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, this is Melinda. Looking back over your career, what do you think your proudest achievement is to date, and what's an area where you think you may have missed the boat at one point?
You know, I was so lucky. I was so advanced. You know what? I never had a fear in my life. I never had a worry. I was going to be happy for life with or without things like Apple Computer. I loved designing neat things. I made decisions that I would be an engineer for life. I did not want to run up the organization chart and be political and tell other people, you know, bad things about their ideas. I just don't want to be that person. And I'm very proud that I was able to come up with these formulas that worked so well for my happiness. I came up with them when I was about 20 years old, and they absolutely worked and made my head feel good no matter what. And that has nothing to do with the Apple Computer. I am also very proud, though, of having brought the world into the mode where a computer can be a fun enough thing to be in your own possession in your own house and can be personal. And it was really that fun and lightness factor was very, very important to consider. A boring computer for engineers just wouldn't have created this market.
That's great. And you weren't afraid to do anything? So, I mean, I imagine that helped you take a lot of risks that some people wouldn't take.
Well, I didn't have to worry about, am I going to have a job? If I was luckily so advanced and smart out of high school, I would never have to worry about getting a job. I didn't have to have a degree. I was working on the hottest product of its day, the iPhone 6 of its day. I was actually designing it at Hewlett-Packard, and I didn't have a college degree. They heard I was some hot designer and interviewed me, and they hired me on the spot. This was so I had kind of a blessed life, you might say, in that way. And that's where my fears didn't go. Now, yes, in later life, after Apple, I had some startups because I liked young, groups of a few people talking a new idea that never existed before. That's my favorite type of organization, not a huge big company. And sometimes I took on a near impossible role, and broke right through it like I always did at Apple. And once, though, I took on some impossible project and made some breakthroughs, but not good enough. And that product didn't wind up being as small, light, and long-lasting on a battery as I'd wanted.
Steve, hi, it's Jason again. Can you tell us about one or two of your favorite applications, mobile applications specifically, whether it be for the iPhone, the iPad, the Android devices? Do you have anything in particular that you focus on that you like to use often?
I wind up looking at the 30 apps I ran in a day, and every one of them was so critical at the time I used it to making life seem a lot easier. And how would I have done this without the app? And I'd have been really stymied. But obviously, Siri was an app that you could buy for the iPhone a year before Apple bought Siri and realized how important it was. And that one was great because I go around asking questions that you have to look up in the encyclopedia when you're young and your family. Dad would always pull down the encyclopedia, the World Book, and get us answers. So I ask Siri all the time questions that come into my head. How far is it from here to there, or in what year did something happen, and get answers back amazingly. And that's a big part of my life. And I can't pinpoint. It's hard to pinpoint any one app because if I looked at a whole slew of all of them, the ones that are built into the iPhone are obviously very important, ones just like weather and phone and texting, that sort of thing. I've got some obscure apps for kind of like encrypted email, encrypted phone calls, encrypted texting. But I couldn't call those important. I just have them. They're interesting, and I use them. And a lot of apps for looking up movie timings, and I've got a lot of social apps. I travel a ton. I have airplane apps that tell me what's going on, advise me when there's changes, keep track of all my schedules for me. I've got, a lot of apps having to do with driving, navigation is important to me. Almost whatever country I'm in, I kind of want to bring up maps and navigation aids. I love our little devices at home. From the Hue light to our Teslas, automobiles that you can just pull up your iPhone and I could pull it up right now and cause the horn to honk to let my wife know I'm thinking of her back home.
That's great. Well, Steve, last question. Michelle Bell and I are fans of the HBO show Silicon Valley. Have you seen it, and do any parts of it ring true for you? And your name is brought up a lot on that show.
I saw the show, and I watched every episode, and I was yes and no on it, good and bad. I think a little bit of it was kind of phonied up for the Bravo network, but some of the characteristics of the people, I run into those people all the time. So it was kind of very true to heart. Now, I'm a pure engineer, and I believe you make something valuable, you make a working model, and you show it to other people to raise your money. They kind of went through that stage in the store. They had to get a working model of that kind of exercise scale or whatever it was. They had to get a working model before they could really get funded. And that's very important to think, because a lot of these people run around and just think, I just have an idea. And it's a really vague idea that I can express in one paragraph. And the trouble is there's a million people that can have an idea. You've actually got to be the one that takes the steps and works and puts a lot of your own time and heart into it to achieve some kind of success. There's so many people, though, in Silicon Valley and more up the bay to San Francisco in the new software era that just want to take an idea and turn it into, it's just great wealth, and now then I can start another company once I'm done with that. They're ready to move on to the next thing right away. They're not loyal to it for life. I didn't like that part of the show.
Yeah, it's not that easy, obviously. All right, well, it's been a
pleasure.
Yeah,
but also you should have something that you're putting so much of your heart into. You're planning to stay in that company for 10 years and develop your next ideas. No, they just want to move on and start another company.
No passion.
So that's very different than how we started Apple.
Sure. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much, Steve Wozniak, for coming on the radio show, and we are very excited to see you in Orlando on January 6th.
Good to talk to you. I promise a great, exciting time.
All right. Thanks. I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much, we'll see you in Orlando. All right. That was Steve Wozniak. Wow.
That was great. What do you think, Jay, as our tech guy? Are you in awe?
Always a big fan, and it's great that we had him on the show. And, he represents the transition into personal computing, like that single individual. He created that device that, started this in the 1970s. So he's definitely an icon.
I remember you were in my office one time a couple years ago, and I was going on and on about how much I really love Steve Jobs, and you were like, "But he wasn't the coder; it was Wozniak."
Yeah, I have a heart for the engineers and the guys, and he was doing the breadboard designs and the IC circuits and the programming. So he's, the icon of this time period for
you just
people.
lost us with the circuits.
Well,
breadboard.
Steve knows what I'm talking about.
Well, yeah, he talked about some sort of turtle thing. Whatever that was.
Turtle graphics.
Well, Jay, we're happy to have you this morning because obviously you're a big fan, because apparently you were up late watching a couple of hours of old Merv Griffin episodes.
Yes, I was watching Steve talk to Merv Griffin. I
what
believe
year
it was
was
1984.
What was he talking about?
Just that early technology, the transition into personal computing, and you can just tell that Merv Griffin at the time was he was having a real hard time absorbing this information. But it was from Steve, had a great presentation, and it was actually quite a long interview. So it was just fun to see him at that time period so many years ago, after the beginning of Apple really taking place in the early 80s.
Sure. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, we didn't even see him face to face. We just heard him over the phone, and boy, his passion and energy really came through.
He's totally intriguing. Yeah. He just has a clear, not just passion, but it's his life, and not just work life, but personal life and social life. Everything is.
And the things he's talking about are stuff that's personal that we all use.
Sure.
I mean,
I like when he said that people can love their devices so much it becomes something that's a second part of them. Yes. You BlackBerry.
It's a shame that you love a dinosaur.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, ASI is about to discontinue. Apparently, it's there's a few holdouts in our company that still use BlackBerries.
Kicking and screaming.
They're going to discontinue the service, and we're going to have to hold a proper burial for Michelle's device. And she's wringing her hands right now.
Shaking her head. Because she handles change
because
so
she's
well.
going to hold on to that thing,
She's not wringing her hands. She's thinking of the days of withdrawal. That's what's going on.
Detox. BlackBerry detox.
Anyway, great conversation with Steve Wozniak. He's going to be at ASI Orlando on January 6th. Go to asishow.com and register today. Wow, it's it's definitely going to be a great presentation.
Yeah.
I cannot
You'd
wait.
like to call him the Woz.
The Woz.
Yeah.
The Woz in Orlando. All right. We've got a little time for you to do the news, Andy Cohen.
Oh.
So why don't you go to it?
All right. Thank you. We begin this morning with product news. 2 weeks ago, California became the first state in the U.S. to pass a statewide plastic bag ban, but now bag manufacturers in the state are fighting back. A judge said this week that if they get 500,000 signatures by January, the measure will have to go to a populist vote before it can become law. Check out Promogram today for full details. Top 40 financial news now. Cintas Corporation said that its revenues grew by 7% in its fiscal first quarter of 2015. Also, the company's operating income in the period grew by 17% compared to last year's first quarter for a total of $163.5 million. On to general economic news now. A new report from the National Federation of Independent Business shows that small companies hired more new workers in September than at any point in the last 8 months. The NFIB said the monthly survey of its members showed the fastest hiring rate recorded since December of 2013, and it was the 12th consecutive month of growth. And finally, make sure to check out the latest episode of The Joe Show and Promogram today. Joe, what is hot for today?
Cable buddies.
Cable buddies?
Yeah, cable buddies.
Are you going to look like Elmo on this episode of The Joe Show?
Oh, that's so funny, Andy. You're so funny.
You know,
For those that don't know what I'm referring to, last week's episode,
You wore feety pajamas.
I
Joe
looked spiffy,
Joe
weirdo.
absolutely looked like Elmo.
I looked very spiffy.
he wore red footy pajamas, and, you know, in order to point out all the features, you actually turned around and talked about the butt flap, which was
There was a
really
bu-
my favorite part.
There was a
I'm
butt
just
flap.
super happy that you did not demonstrate the butt flap.
You look like a
just
hobbit
referred
ready
to
for
it.
sleepy time in the Shire.
Hey, look who's talking.
I didn't have footy pajamas on.
So, in other words, make sure to check out that and more in The Joe Show
It's a
and Promogram
fantastic
today.
Joe Show. It's a fantastic product. I'm going to wear it next week in the studio.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. You know what? I actually don't think I'll be here that day. I'm sorry.
We'll take
All right, we have
photos.
just enough time in the show for Michelle's favorite segment, where we talk about our favorite products of the week. And no, Michelle, you cannot talk about your BlackBerry.
Yeah. Or BlackBerry-related products, if there are none.
What do you have?
I have mine is from iClick, and in honor of Apple, I chose one of their USB drives called their Cupertino. Who's based in Cupertino? Jay?
Apple?
Of course. And it's one of their new items, and iClick is ASI 62124, iClick.com.
All right, Joe Haley, you're holding a juice box.
It's not a juice box.
Looks like a juice box.
It looks like a juice box, but inside there's actually a power bank. Cool thing, power bank. You know, it'll charge up your iPhone, your smartphone, your Droid, your tablet, whatever it is. It's the packaging. The packaging, very creative. Looks like a
cute.
juice box, and you can upsell it with an
Juice up your
octopus.
promotion.
Yeah, with an octopus cable that will allow you to charge any of your other devices. You don't have to carry all the different charging cables. You can get this from Orig Audio, and you find them online at www.origaudio, origaudio.com.
Does
Thanks
it have
for
a
the
straw
spell.
on the back?
It does.
Oh,
That's-
that's
Oh, yeah.
Isn't
That's
that
really
it's
cute.
pretty
You have
cool.
to have a
And it's
straw.
called the juice box. That's what they actually call it, the juice box.
I like that.
Very creative.
Andy, what do you have?
I like it. So, although it's been very chilly overnight in recent evenings, I've refused to turn the heat on in our house.
Our
So-
heat hasn't gone
so,
on yet either.
so my wife and son are not so happy with me. But
I hear
that's
you
the
also
fact.
set your toilet on
Uh,
fire on Sunday.
That's a totally separate
But you
story,
did.
which we will not share here.
Were you eating Mexican food the previous time?
No, I literally set the toilet on fire. Anyway,
Flames.
that's a
So
separate
do you have
story.
a
So,
wooden toilet?
in honor of the chilly evenings, this is a 50-inch by 60-inch throw blanket. It comes from Terrytown, and that is ASI 90913. I'll share the other story on a separate time.
I'm sure you will. We'll look forward to that. You can find all these products on asicentral.com/radio. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to today's special guest, Steve Wozniak. And don't forget to go to asishow.com and register for the Orlando show. You can see Steve live in person at our keynote on Tuesday, January 6th. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks for joining us,
Peace.
Jay.
Thank you.